Hello and welcome to Online PTE. My name is Alistair and today's session is Module 1 Speaking and Task 3 Describing Image. So have you got your pen and paper prepared? Have you downloaded the worksheets? And if you have, then we'll begin. So describing image. For many students, the most difficult part of the PTE test. If you get control and get confidence at describing image, then it will help you tremendously for not only for your speaking but for all aspects of the test. The more time I teach PTE, the more important the ability to describe an image well and accurately for your success. So when I do one-on-one teaching or tutorials with students, I can feel the anxiety building up when they're describing an image. And therefore, like every part of your PTE test, your online practice, you must get practice at home. We have a lot of material which is available through our Moodle and you should be accessing that in order to give you that practice. So you have 25 seconds to look at a graph. Now in those 25 seconds, my recommendation is you spend 10 seconds looking at the graph so you understand what the content is. What is it describing? Does it have a vertical and a horizontal axis? What does the vertical and horizontal axis indicate? And so about 10 to 12 seconds to understand the image. And then for the next 12 to 15 seconds, you've got to decide what you are going to describe and what you're going to leave alone. And it's important to make your mind up about that and stick with it, okay? So we'll actually get you to look at the first graph on the worksheet. And that worksheet is the financial records of an Australian multinational company are shown on the line graph. And below that, as you'll see, you've got a description of that graph, and that can be spoken within 40 seconds. I work on a 4-sentence model. So 4 sentences to describe the information. And the reason I say that it's a 4-sentence model, you should be punctuating your speech so that there is a pause between the end of the first sentence and the start of the next, and the same between 2 and 3 and 3 and 4. So the first sentence introduces the image, and it's really important that that takes no longer than 10 seconds, in fact preferably less than that, about 6 to 7 seconds. Okay, so that's something you can certainly practice. Use your phone, put it on stopwatch, time how long it takes you to introduce the graph. If you're taking 10 seconds and longer, it's too long, because you need to be focusing on sentences 2, 3 and 4 to describe the main features. And that's important that it's the main features. Now, once you've decided what you're going to describe, stick with that. Yeah? Try to get that in within the 40 seconds, so you're describing the main features within that time. And if you missed part of the information, leave it. Don't try and go back or correct. You're going to focus on what you're describing. That's really important. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to read out the description that you've got on your worksheet there, and then we'll talk about what's on the board again. So the given line graph shows the financial records of a particular Australian company. It can be seen that rates, revenue and user charges follow a similar pattern throughout, although the former is consistently higher, starting off at approximately $1,400 million in 2012, and this figure is expected to reach just below 2.5 million. Borrowings increased to reach around 1,200 million in 2014, when they fell to a trough in 2016. However, they are predicted to increase dramatically before a further sharp fall around 2020. Finally, grants and subsidies were fairly stable for the first 3 years before reaching a peak in 2016, after which the total is estimated to fall gradually. Now, if you're looking at the emboldened parts of the starts of each sentences, you'll see they're started off in a different way. And that's something I want you to think about when you start describing some graphs. So the starters were the given line graph, it can be seen that, borrowings increased, and finally. So you start your sentence off in a different way, and that just gives variety to your speech. Saying years and saying numbers and figures can be quite difficult and can take quite a bit of time. So that's something else you should be practicing. 2012, 2013, not 2012 and 2014. Oh, sorry, 2013, 2012. And you should notice on the horizontal axis of that line graph that the time changes from present and past into the future, and therefore you have to concentrate on changing your verb tense and using verbs such as expect, predict, estimate, suggest, plus the word will. Okay, so what I'm going to get you to do, just to get into the swing of things, is to read out the description that's on your worksheet on the financial records of an Australian multinational company. Okay, when you're ready, off you go. So, pause the video. How did you go? Did you get that in within 40 seconds? And line graphs, and that's a reasonably complex line graph. Line graphs can be quite tricky to get in within that time, but it is more important, this is a really important point, it's more important is the quality of what you say, and rather than trying to rush to get all the information in the 40 seconds. All right? Okay. That was the first sheet. Just turn over to the sheet number 2, and there's some tips that I've already mentioned, talking about how you spend your 25 seconds before the description starts. You're looking to describe the main features, not all the information. With this graph, the change of the verb tense from simple past to future tense is important, and there's some suggestive verbs that you can use because you get quite a few graphs where that's the case. Practice saying numbers and figures. These take a couple of seconds to speak, and just a reminder there that 2012 should be 2012 and not 2012. So in line graphs, bar graphs, pie charts and tables, you are looking for similarities and differences which will help you group your information together. And remember that 4-sentence model, where the first sentence introduces the image and second, third and fourth describes the main features. And in fact, those starting points, let's go back to them. The given line graph, it can be seen that borrowings increased. Finally, you can use that in a lot of graphs to start off your sentence in a different way. Okay, turn on to the next sheet, number 3, and you'll see a single pie chart. The favourite types of movie for 18 to 25-year-olds in the US are shown in the pie chart. Now your introduction, which is less than 10 seconds, should be just rephrasing those words. You don't need to overcomplicate that. And you need to just have a quick look at that and think, how am I going to order this? What am I going to put together? And what am I going to leave out? So with a single pie chart, which is relatively easy compared to many tasks, always start off with describing the largest slice of the pie first, which you can see refers to romance, and that accounts for 30%. Then move on to action, accounting for 25%. Then comedy and sci-fi, I'll come back to that in a moment, 20%. And finally drama at 5%. All right, let's look at the next image, which is a single pie chart, which you can see on your notes is the favourite types of movies for 18 to 25-year-olds in the US. Thinking again about the 4-sentence model, how would you go about describing that graph? What information would you put together, and how the order of what you would use in your description? So as you can see below the pie chart there's a few lines for you to make some notes on that image. So don't worry about the full sentence, but just below the pie chart, just make a couple of notes as to how you would approach that image. So thinking about 4 sentences, first sentence to introduce and rephrase the title. And then my recommendation, you should be starting off on the biggest slice of the pie, which is romance, at 30%. That's followed by action. And then you would group comedy and sci-fi together and finish off with drama at 5%. Now, by the way, just a small thing. If you see something like sci-fi on an image and you're not sure what that stands for, then you have to say what you can see. So that's a really important thing. A lot of students or candidates will know that sci-fi is short for science fiction, but if you don't, any vocabulary, just say it and move on quickly to describe the percentage. Now, a small point about percentages. Romance movies at 30%. And romance, beg pardon, percentages is always of the total, which is 100%. Romance accounts for 30% of the total figure. And that's a really good phrase to use so that you clearly show the computer that that's what you're describing. A small point, it is never 30%. It is always 30% or 25%. It's a percentage of 30%, but it is never 30%. That's a really important point. It's one of the quirks of the English language, okay? So, I'm going to describe that pie chart. I want you to listen and take a couple of notes from my description. So, the favourite types of movies for 18 to 25-year-olds are shown in the given pie chart. It can be seen that romantic movies account for 30% of the total figure, and that is followed by action movies at 25%. Movies about comedy or science fiction account for 20%, and the least popular movies are movies about drama at just 5%. So with a single pie chart, if you describe that pretty well, you should be able to get that in within 30 seconds, okay? And you might have noticed that I changed a couple of the forms of the word, romance to romantic. That's something else for you to consider, okay? All right, let's turn to the next graph. It shows the process of milk production. So, processes, you might get something which is reasonably complex like that. So we'll keep that information on. But if you have an image which is about a process, then good to use a combination of active and passive voice. Now, some of you will have learned active and passive voice in grammar maybe a few years ago, but if you do need to remind yourself about that, then there are lots of grammar websites that you can go to in order to get used to the passive voice. So for example, if you look at the milk production, at the bottom line there, milk tanker daily delivery to dairy. So a milk tanker delivers milk daily to the dairy is in the active voice. You change that into the passive voice. Milk is delivered by a milk tanker daily to the dairy. So that's the most common use of the passive voice. So just an example there. Yeah, so milk is delivered to the dairy, and some form of the verb to be plus, do you know what that is? The past participle of the verb, and that's the most common use of the passive voice. Now, getting used to the passive again is really good for a process, but also will help you in your essay writing. And it's good to have a combination and a bit of variety. Okay, so I'll get you to look at that process, the milk production. And again, could you put that into 4 sentences? It can be done. You have to be very accurate. And yeah, are you able to work out the order which is given in the arrows and finishing off with the produce in the supermarkets or shops? So every time you have a process, and sometimes you'll see in PTE material or PTE tasks life cycles of a mosquito, for example. Always finish off with, okay, so I hope you can see that. So every time you get a life cycle or a process in PTE, finish off your description, ready for the process to begin again. It's a nice way to bring it to a conclusion. Okay? All right, now you can practice that in your own time, and again think, are you able to put that into a 4-sentence model? All right, we're going to look at 2 more. So I'll get you to turn to sheet number 5. Graph is this type of graph, this bar graph, is occurring quite a lot in PTE examinations. You can see you've got one called drinking habits by age in the US. Again, you've got, okay, I'll just show you the first two bars. So this is called a stack graph, where different parts of the graphs are stacked one on top of the other. The important thing with this is you don't need to mention too many figures. You can see that for the 16 to 24 age group, it starts off at around 60%, and that gives you your starting point. And then you can see that that figure varies as you work your way through the different ages. So describe each age group in turn. So start off with the biggest bar, which is the people that have never drunk, and then work your way to the yellow and the red, and finish off with the green. Okay, so quite a tricky one, and something for you to try and get that confidence in describing, because that stack graphs are very common. Now, I would really recommend with this one, and maybe another of the graphs that you've got, in actually writing out a description. Yeah, spend some time to write it out, use the 4-sentence model, and check your structures. Then obviously you can practice speaking that description. So that's really important. All right. Okay, and finally we'll look at the last one, which is number 6. And you'll see there you've got 2 pie charts. Again, very common that you've got 2 pie charts to compare. And this one is female and male, manual and non-manual employment, and can be quite a complex graph. So those first 10 seconds or so, you should be looking at how the information is presented. Craft or similar, general labours, other manual, really quite tricky. And then you should be describing the same colours at the same time. So I would start off with the largest slices of the pie, which is the other non-manual professions, 29 and 36%. And then I will be comparing the green, and then I will be comparing the grey. And so you're looking for similarities, and you're looking for differences. And that's another one that I would recommend you writing out. So write out the description so that you're clear about the structures, and then have a go and see that you can get that in within 40 seconds. So I repeat, it's important is the quality of what you say. Don't rush. If the 40 seconds is complete and you're still speaking, there's nothing you can do to change that. So keep on going, and then you'll go on to the next graph to finish off with. Okay, so just to conclude, You do need to practice describing image. The more able you are to describe images, 6 to 7 of them in your test, your confidence will start to increase, not only for the speaking, but as I said at the start, for a lot of students, describing image is the most difficult part of the whole exam. Okay, so perseverance, persistence, and consistency are really important. Get lots of practice in, make sure you get your homework in on time, and stick to your course outline, and remember the teachers are waiting for you.